Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Bonded, Into Blackness, out November 12th on Century Media Records. This album has 11 tracks, 46 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a German thrash metal band featuring former members of Sodom, Burnman, and Macca. As far as the structure goes, this album feels very linear, straightforward, even simple you could say. It's an album that stays consistent, that stays cohesive, that stays balanced from beginning to end, and doesn't lose steam. As strong as it is at the beginning is as strong as it's going to be all the way through to the end. They can move the songs around and you wouldn't lose anything as far as this album is concerned. It stays very compact. Once you get into the soundscape, I felt like the album brought together new school of thrash metal with old school thrash metal. Not necessarily in the overall sound. In the overall sound, I felt like the album felt a little bit more modern to me in terms of the production, in terms of the soundscape, in terms of how it drives. But the old school approach that comes into the guitar solos really stands out. It becomes one of the highlights of this record. The guitar solos are phenomenal. They have this brightness to them. They break the songs. They give you a little bit of a chance to breathe and enjoy the melody that they carry, the nuances that they bring, because there isn't a song that does that within the context of the album. So having the solos do that on every single song really makes the album feel a lot more dynamic than what it actually is, because it is a very linear record. So I really like that old school approach and how it ties in with the more modern, perhaps, thrash metal sound that the record has. So it's walking that fine line between both worlds. Now the guitars are not just bringing that old school thrash metal sound to the solos, they're also driving the overall experience of the album. This is a guitar driven record. There's no ifs or buts about it. It lives or dies on the sound of the guitars and on what the guitars will do on every single song. Pushing the record, pushing the tracks, driving the listener, driving the experience. This is a heavy record as far as guitars are concerned. It really puts a lot of emphasis on what is happening there and on the overall experience and the impact that it has and the overall soundscape. This is not to say that the drums are not important. I don't think you're going to get that drive, that dynamic nature that the guitars have, sometimes a little bit more melodic, sometimes a little bit more driven, sometimes a little bit more grittier, never super chunky, but grittier. I don't think you can have that from the guitars, that diversity, that mobility that they carry without the drums being consistent and sitting in the backseat and packing the sound. This record creates a wall of sound. Sure, that wall of sound is pushed forward by the guitars, but it becomes as thick as it is because the drums are there in order to give it some consistency. So they play an important role, but perhaps a secondary role when you look at the overall soundscape, when you look at the big picture of this album. On the other hand, you have the vocals. The vocals very consistent in its approach from beginning to end. What you get with the first track is what you're going to get all the way through. There are some nuances here and there, but very few and far in between. Not enough to really break it away, or not enough for you to have a different perception of the album all around. I like the grittiness of the voice and matches at times the grittiness of the sound. It helps propel the tracks. So when you have an album that's heavy guitar driven and you have vocals like these that really match that intensity, it really feels at times overpowering, because it just feels like this sound is just coming at you relentlessly, song in and song out. That's the overall experience that this album has in store for its listeners. Now, this is a thrash metal album and it feels like a thrash metal album. It sounds like a thrash metal album. I think the key factors of this record that perhaps allow it to stand out in the crowd of other albums of the same genre is that it has that ability to stay that line, walk that fine line between the old school and the new, more modern approach. It still has a lot of traditional values from that perspective, but at the same time it doesn't feel dated. And I think that's an important element if you're releasing an album in 2021. But it doesn't reinvent the wheel either. So it has some cool elements. It brings something fresh to the table, but it doesn't change your perception of this record. It doesn't change your perception of the genre. They're just trying to find their path. They're just trying to find their sound, and they're trying to bring everything that was done in the past with everything that's been done now. That's exactly what Into Blackness has to offer. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Watch, second track on the album. The guitars shred. I mean, I could say this about every single song, but the guitars shred, the drums pack the sound behind it, allowing this wall of sound to have a very strong driving force, specifically in the verses. Once you get into the chorus, it's a little bit more melodic, it breaks a little bit the routines, and you see the same thing happening vocally. Vocally, the song is more gritty, more direct in the verses. Once you get into the chorus, it becomes slightly more melodic to match what the sound is doing. So it's a track that has dynamic mechanisms between the verses and chorus. It feels a little bit more of ebbs and flows as you move across, but overall stays very compact. The solo is phenomenal. It has that old school style, that old school approach, allows the song to breathe, but at the same time, it makes the track feel complete. Because this is a song that, from a structural perspective, it has an old school style approach with versus, chorus, solo, chorus. And I like the fact that when you have a style of song like that, when you have an old school design like that, including an old school solo in it or a solo section in it, really allows the song to come to life and feel complete. Next you have the Holy Whore, a more melodic sounding track at times. It still has this big wall of heaviness, but that big wall of heaviness morphs or changes and allows the melody to weave in and out. So it's a song that has more of a weaving sound to it, and it has drive in that weaving sound. So you don't feel this big wall coming at you. You don't feel this aggression coming at you with intensity and right in your face. You notice it, but it weaves itself a little bit better, making it a little bit easier to digest from that perspective. It almost like it morphs and it grows as you move along. The vocals are a little bit more dynamic on this track as well. You start to see some nuances vocally on this song that you haven't really heard up until this point. It doesn't change your overall perception of the track or the album, but it works well with that weaving sound that this track has. Also a song that has an incredible solo section that brings extra energy, that brings extra light, that really sets almost the track apart from that perspective, and it closes off the song in a very nice way, making this song feel complete. The solos on this record always add value to the songs. They never feel like an add-on, and that's why they always make these songs feel a little bit more robust. Last but not least, Final Stand, a more direct and linear track. This song really feels linear all the way through. There's not nuances that become visible. This is not a dynamic song with ebbs and flows. It's just pedal to the metal. It tries to take you from point A to point B in the shortest distance possible with as much aggression and intensity as it can. It doesn't break, it just moves, it just takes the listener, and because of that it feels very punchy, it feels very powerful, and you feel that coming from the musical side, but you also feel that coming from the vocal side. So it just has a lot of steam, and it just moves it forward. It just has power and intensity, but it has a power and intensity that's driven forward, so it feels light in terms of the sound that it carries, but the momentum that it has makes the song feel heavier. This is it, Bonded Into Blackness, out November 12 on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.